All right, so first things first, we're going to get the Figma app, right? So you can either use Figma on the web or you can download the application. So I'm just going to type Figma download here. So once I do that, you're going to click on this first link here and it will take you to this section. So if you already have an account, you can go ahead and log in, but if you don't have, you can click on get started. Then for the Figma downloads here, you can download the desktop app. So if you're using a Mac, you can download the Mac or the Windows here. So I'm going to click on get started and I'm going to go ahead and create an account. I'm going to use an email that I haven't used before. All right, so once you do that, they're going to tell you that you should click the link sent to your email, then complete the registration. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. All right, so this is the first thing that you're going to see once you log in, and it will ask you what is your name. This is how it will appear on Figma. I'm going to leave it as Pamela the designer, right? And I'm going to go ahead and choose that I want to use it for design. And do any of this describe your work? Well, I'm a founder. All right, who do you normally collaborate with? Clients. Want to invite some collaborative? Skip this one. What brings you Figma today? All right, others. Let's continue. Yes, many times. All right, so which plan would you like? So Figma has professional plans and starter plan. You can make use of this starter plan and it's going to serve you very well. Okay, so these are the pegs for the professional ones and this is the peg for this one, right? But trust me, I've been using the free version of Figma and it is good. But if you're working with a larger team, right, you like to have like shareable team libraries, unlimited version history, custom permissions, and unlimited pages, then you can go for the professional Figma account. It's not actually hard. You pay just $12 right here. You can see the charges here, but trust me, Figma is great. I'm going to choose starter and then I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to select what would you like to do first. Design with Figma. I'm going to finish. And yes, we're right here in Figma. So you get these basic things. It kind of just prompts you to know what it's all about, right? So that's how the user experience of Figma is. It is great. It brings you to this first place, this Figma basics, right? It tells you that this highlighted T here or icon is actually the test tool. You can use it. You can go ahead and see that this is the move icon. So change formatting in the design panel, use the test. Now you can just like do all of that, but I'm going to like simplify it and then show you how it works in the most simple way possible for you to understand. So I'm going to click on back to files. So this is your dashboard. So here you can create a new file. You can use FigJam basics, Figma basics, FigJam basics, but let's not dive into those now. I'm going to show you the most important things you need to get started with in design. Subsequently, if you're following my 30 days UI design tutorial, you're going to learn a lot. So here you can create a team. Let's say you want to collaborate with a team. You can create new team here, put the name of the team. Let's say Pamela the designer's team. So you can add emails of the collaborators here, but I'm going to skip for now. I'm going to choose starter. So projects that you add here, you can collaborate with people on this project. So let's not dwell much on all of this, right? But just know that if you want to collaborate with team members, you have any design file you want to create, you import it into this team project. So let's go back to draft here, and then we can then create a design file, or we can also come to this, your team here, and create a design file. So once you click on create that file here, this is the view you're going to get. This is where the magic happens. So this is what you get on a web view, but I'm going to go ahead and open my Figma application because I have it downloaded, and that is what I'm going to be using for this tutorial. All right, even the desktop view has similar view, right? So remember, I went to my team here, team project under Pamela the designer's team, and I clicked on design file, right? So I like using dark mode, so that's why my screen is like this. So this is Figma, and it's nothing complicated. It's actually very simple, and anybody can use it as long as you set your mind to it. Now I'm going to go ahead and title this section here. Let me just call it 30 days UI design tutorial. So it's easier to title your file so that when you go to your home page, you can easily find what you're looking for. So I'm going to take you through every single thing on this Figma where we do the magic of design so that you understand. So if you come to this home tab here, this main menu here, and you click the drop down, you get a list of options here. So this quick action just clearly shows you, let's say you're looking for something and you don't know the command. For me that is used to Figma, if I want to click on anything, maybe I want to move between these tools here, I know for this tool here, once I click on F on my keyboard, it activates this tool. I don't need to come here to click on it. But let's say you do not remember any tool, so you can search for menus here, commands and plugins here. So let's say I want to remove something, I can use the plugin which is called remove BG here, and that, or let's say I want to move an item, maybe my Figma is stuck on something and I want to move it. Once I type move, I get to see the command I'm supposed to click, which is V, and I'm back to my move tool here. So here for this file here, you can create a new file just like we did here. You're either creating a new design file, a new FigJam file, or you want to set a file from your sketch file as your file, or you want to place an image into anything you have here, you can click on that. Or you want to save local copies, like these are options you get under this file section. Same thing with edit, you want to undo, redo, copy as, paste over, find next. Don't worry, once we start using this application, you're going to see how it practically works, and you're going to get used to some of the shortkeys that we use for this application. So if you want to undo an action here, you don't need to come to this section. You can just click on your Command Z. Also, if you want to redo, so even to copy, you don't need these sections here. There's shortkeys that you can use on your keyboard to do this command. So same thing goes with view. So view depends on what you want the view of these platforms to be like, right? Do you want to hide UI are these things that you see here. Maybe if you're designing, and you can also right click on your mouse here and say you want to hide UI, that one goes away. Okay, so yeah, don't worry, it's not difficult, trust me. It's not like everybody at one spot, or the time you start learning you got to understand every single thing here. It is while you're doing it, when the problem arises and then you start looking for solution, then you realize the importance of these things that have been kept here by Figma, right? So don't get yourself all worked up if it's seeming too complicated or it's seeming too novel. It's going to all make sense while you start designing proper. So basically that's it. Let me go to the important one. We also have the plugins here. We all have the widget. You can get widgets here. Then preference, depending on what you want, the preferences you want, you can customize it here. Maybe if you unhighlight this one, it's not going to show again, like just your preference. Then you could go to this section. You have your help page, your logout, and you know, just like help and support, some sorts of, right? So yeah, so I'm going to show you, don't worry, we're going to use all these things while we're working, especially things like plugin. Now you're going to see how it works. What I'm going to do now is to talk about this other things. So here, this where my mouse is now, this is my left hand side. This is what you call the layers panel. So you have layers here, which are basically things that you've layered in your design board here. So these are the things that are here. They appear here with their name so that you know what object you're working with. Then for assets, I'm going to show you how it works. So assets are more like things that you have customized and placed in, let's say, your library that you're going to be using or reusing most of the time. You don't need to always import it, always create that particular object. This is how you create it in Figma. It becomes like your asset that you can just come to this section, drag it and drop it into your design. So while we go ahead, I'm going to show you how it works. But let me first of all take you through all those things, then come back and create an asset so you can see how it works. So this first tool here is the move tool and the scale tool. Once you click the drop down, you have the move tool and the scale tool. if you click V on your keyboard, it automatically activates the move tool for you. So with this object here, you can move this object around anywhere. If you click on K on your keyboard or you select this scale tool here, what this scale does, it just as the word suggests, I'm going to scale this thing here. I want to scale this. How much do you want to scale it? So you can come to this section here. This is your right hand section, and you can choose how many times you want to scale it. 10 times. You can choose that. So what I did basically for this thing to zoom in and zoom out, I held onto my mouse. You know how you pinch your mouse in and out, but while doing that, I was holding on to my command or control for window button on the keyboard, and that is why you could move this tool here. That's it for this tool. So let's go to this F tool, this frame tool. So this frame tool is when we're designing, we use frame. Frame just clips frame is like, I'll use the word bucket. So anything you put inside it stays inside it. It's more like a parent that houses everything you put inside it. Okay, so the behavior of this one, for instance, this one here is a rectangle. Look at it here. This is a rectangle that I created. I'm going to do it again so you can see it. I just clicked on this, or you can click R on your keyboard to activate it, and you can drag a shape. So this shape now, this rectangle, it has a different behavior with this frame. So I'm going to click this right frame, and I'm going to also draw a shape. Now let me give it a different color so you understand what I'm saying. So if you come to this field here, you can click this box here, and it brings up this dialog, which is the custom for customizing your colors of the object that you've selected. I'm going to also give it a red, or I'm going to come here. This icon here is a color picker. If I click on it and I come here to another color and then select that color, automatically whatever I selected there will get the color I picked, what I use the color picker to pick. So what I'm trying to demonstrate to you is the difference between the frame and the rectangle. This is the rectangle and this is a frame. So now I'm going to take this one. This is another rectangle here, and I'm going to place it inside this one. I'm going to right click because this thing now is hidden at the back of the other rectangle. Now if you look at this layers panel here, this first triangle here is on top of this other one, but I want this other one, that small one, to be on top of the other rectangle. So I'm going to move this up here. All right, now if I move this main rectangle, that's this rectangle, it doesn't move with that other rectangle. Do you understand? I'm clicking Command Z now to go back. But let's say I take this rectangle and I chuck it into this place. If you look at this layers panel, this frame here now has opened up and has accepted this rectangle. Let's say I want to move the frame. It's going to move with the rectangle. If I go ahead to this place here, if you click your mouse here, each item here has an eye shutter. So let's say you don't want it to be visible. Maybe you don't want to delete that item, but you don't want it to be visible anymore. So you're just going to close the eyes and it just automatically disappears. But it's still there, but it's just not visible. So once I close the eyes of that frame, it goes with the rectangle. That's different behavior between this rectangle and the frame. Now we use frames when we're designing. So if I click on frame now, you're going to see on this properties panel here, this is my right hand side, that there are different options that have come up for you for frames. So while we're designing, you know, we design mobile application, web applications. So there are different digital interface that we design for. You could see phone, you could see tablet, you could see desktop, you could see presentation, smartwatches, paper, social media, you know. You could see all of that in the Figma community. You can use that to get items here. So what we do now is to make use of frame. Let's say I want to design for a mobile device. I'm going to choose this iPhone 13 mini and I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to maybe create a rectangle in it to start designing. Remember, when you come to mobile application, there's always maybe this side here, and also there may be some shapes here. So that's it. Now why we use it now? So imagine if I had used a rectangle to add these other rectangles in it. Imagine I move this thing around everything is going to just maybe scatter. It's not going to be inside the rectangle. But I want everything to be snapped together, so we use a frame. It has its own behavior. So yes, that's that for frame. So let's go to section here. What we use section for is this. I'm going to click on V on my keyboard and I'm going to duplicate this. The way I duplicated this is by holding my option key and using my mouse to drag out. I can also do Command C, click on this item here, Command C, Command V, and it duplicates. So what we use this section for, that's what I want to demonstrate to you now. So let's say I created this object here and this is a button. Just follow me. I'm going to create corner radius. Don't worry, I'm still coming to that to explain what it means to you. Then I'm going to change the color. Let's change the color here. If you click on T on your keyboard, it automatically activate the text tool. But I'm going to name this individual. Then I'm going to come to this section here, this text section here, and I'm going to select 20. I'm going to increase the font to, don't worry, I'm still going to show you what it means. I just want to create an illustration for you to understand what section does in Figma. All right, so we have these two things going on. Let me give this a blue color. I do not like this red. Let's give it this other color. Right, so we have this one here. Then let's say we have this item here and we have this item here. When you create a section now, I'm going to go ahead and click on section and I'm going to put this in this section here. Then I'm going to go again and click on section here and I'm going to place this in a section. So what we're doing is, it also makes the work of the dev guys easy. They get to understand what you're doing, and it also helps us in prototyping. Prototyping is connecting one action to another. So this frame now, what I want to do is, if you click on individual here, I want it to connect to this section. So there might be other flows on this section here, maybe 2 to 3 flows. I want it to connect like that. I'm going to click on this, click on it, go to prototype, click on it, and then I'm going to move it here. I'm going to put it here. So I'm going to click on this. Once you click on prototype, you get this icon, this plus sign here. Then you can take it and then connect it to this section. So what I'm trying to do is, I've grouped different actions in different sections now. So while we're prototyping, I'm going to play this here so you see. Don't worry, I'm still going to take you through all of it so that you understand in a structured way how it works. So what I want is, if I click on this, let it take me to this frame. So I might then connect this one. This first frame here might have a different feature, this one might have a different feature, but I can then connect it so that you can move along. So let me change the color of this one so you get exactly what I'm saying. You get the difference. So I'm going to click on this one, it takes me here. So if I still select this one and click on this one, it takes me to the next one. You understand? So it makes the work easy. You're connecting things in Figma. So these items here belong to this section, this other item here belong to this section. It's as simple as that. Let's not dwell on it. You get everything once you start designing proper. So that's how sections work. The next thing I'm going to show you is how slides works. So slides is more like you want to capture a certain area in your design. So let's say I want to capture this section here. I'm just going to select all the side and I'm going to click on this export here on my properties panel here. I clicked on the plus sign. So let's say I want to export it. I can then increase it to, let's say, 2, and then you can also preview it here, preview what you're exporting. Then I'm going to click on export slides. Then I can export it here. Yes, let me replace the one I already have. So I'm going to export the slides now. When you click on export, let me save it on my desktop so you can see it. I'm going to minimize this. Okay, this is it now, and this is how it works. That is what slides does. So the next thing we're going to do again is to look at the other tools here. I've already shown you how rectangle works. This rectangle is for creating a rectangular shape. So you can also click on R on your keyboard to activate the tool, and you can then draw a shape. So when you draw the shape, you can give it a definite shape, like what you want it to be. You mustn't keep resizing it to get that size. This is where you adjust it here, the width and the height. Then if you want it to have a rounded radius, you can come to this corner radius and make adjustment. So if you click on this corner radius like this, let's say you want to give it as much as 30, you can see this edge here adjust, but it's going to adjust for the whole 4 corners. But if you want to adjust, let's say for just the upper part, for other corners, what we're going to do is to click on this independent corners here. Once you click on it, you get this dialog lighted, and you then can make adjustment, or you can customize the sections you want to have the corner radius. So you could say you want it on the top right corner left. Let me give it a 30 there. I also want it on the right top right corner. Let's give it a 30. You can see that this other section here, this bottom here, doesn't have that corner radius. So that's how that one works. So the next thing again is line. Line is just as the word says. You can draw a line. You can also use L to activate the line tool. So if you want to use or draw a line on your design, what you're going to do is hold on to Shift on your keyboard so that you have a straight line. However, if you do not hold on to Shift while you're dragging it, I'm going to click L again. This is what you're going to get. It's not going to be very straight. Okay, so the next thing now we're going to do is to look at arrow. Arrow is just as the word suggests. And remember, when you're using arrow, or when you want to draw an arrow here, make sure you hold on to your Shift key to draw, just as the name suggests. But you can make adjustments to these objects you're seeing here, all of them. It comes with a stroke. Let's say you want the stroke to be outside, or you want the stroke to be centered. You can also give it a width, like how full it is. So I'm going to zoom in so you see. So let's say I give it as much as 10. I want you to see the difference. So you can see that it has increased in the width that it has. So here again, if you want the arrow to be the other way around, you want to have a reversed, sorry, I have to select this. You can see if you want to have this, you want to have cycle arrow, or you want to have a diamond arrow, so you can just make this adjustment here. You can also play around all of this. This one is for this other side, you know. So this one here is the end point, this one is the start point, so you can make adjustment to all of that. Okay, so yeah, same thing go with line. So for line 2, it comes with a stroke, and you can then do the same thing for line here. Just same thing goes for line. Look at now is this other ellipse tool that we have here. So we use this one to draw rounded shapes. So but before I draw the shape, remember, we're going to hold on to our Shift key, and we're going to draw a shape. Now when I draw the shape, by default it comes with this ash color, D9 D9 D9. That's the color code. It comes with it. Every color in Figma has a color code. Colors have color codes, so just note that. But if I want to change the color, I click on this fill here, and I come to this section. If I have the color, you could be using HSB color code, or you could use the RGB color code, or you could use the hex color, which has 6 digits, right? Let me take it back to HSB color. Then you can make changes to your color. You could use the color picker and go pick another color here and change it. So this shape gives us different things in our design. Don't worry, we'll show you how it works. Let's say we want to keep the shape here when we're working. You know how you've seen websites that have, let's say, this kind of shapes here, or maybe I'm going to click L, I'm going to give it a different feel. Maybe they have something like this going on. So that's basically how website design or mobile application comes about. We use all these shapes just to create that feel, that interface that you're seeing. This is basically the shapes that we use. All right, so next thing is this polygon shape. Just as the name suggests, is another shape on its own. Just like this, you can create this kind of shape with the polygon. Then we also have the star, just like the name suggests. Hold on to shift and draw your star. But the thing about the star is that you can see that we have just 5 pointing sections, 1 2 3 4 5. So if you want to increase it, let's say you want to increase it to a 10, you could do that. You can also, let's say, adjust it to be like this or increase it like this. You know, depends on just basically what you want to do with it, right? You can play around with this ratio here. You could just also drag it here, give it a bend a bit here. So I'm just holding on to this point or this dot here, and I'm changing the shape. All right, so that's what the star tool does. So for this one, you can come here and click on it to place an image from your work here, and create an image from your work here, place an image into your file. It takes you directly to your files, and you can import an image. So yeah, that's that for that. Then we also have the pen tool. So this pen tool is a bit dramatic when you're using it. So you can just use it to create funny shapes, and it could form, or it could create something unique in your design. So let me click on view on my keyboard and give you a proper illustration of how this works. I'm going to use a frame. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go back and take my pen tool. So if you click on P on your keyboard, you automatically switch to a pen tool. So I'm going to click, drag here, drag here, drag here. I'm just creating funny shapes. So each point I get to, I want it to stop, I just click on my mouse, click on my mouse, and click on my mouse. So once I'm done, I can click on done. I can select the shape. Once the shape is selected, I go to fill and I give it a color. So don't worry, I'll show you what it does. So this shape now is not inside my frame. If you look at this layers panel here, this is the frame itself, but the vector, what I created now is a vector, is a simple vector, is on top of the frame. So I'm going to take this vector from this layers panel and I'm going to drag it into the frame. So if it comes into the frame now, the magic about it is that I can actually hide things inside my frame. Remember, I told you that frames act like containers. They can swallow things. So I can actually drag it into my frame. But I don't want to do this. I want to use this vector to create a unique shape. So imagine you have it designed like this. So let me just shape this. See, a design is already coming up. I'm going to use the rectangle, maybe create this menu fill here. All right, so let's even take a rectangle and create a small frame here. So I'm going to right click on this rectangle. Now I'm going to show you what plugin does. Once I right click, I get these options here. I'm going to go to plugins. So there's a plugin called Pixels, where you get stunning images to use on your design. So I'm going to use the first one. Now, because I want this image to stick right into my rectangle, I'm going to select the rectangle, make sure the rectangle is selected. Then I'm going to click on the image and it's going to go right into my design. All right, see how it sits perfectly here. Now with this shape here, what I'm going to do is maybe reduce the opacity a bit just to look like my image here. Then for this one, I'm going to select the vector and I don't want it to have this line it has, so I'm going to remove the stroke here. And I can also play around this. If I double click into this vector, I can change the position, maybe make further adjustments. You understand? And if I still don't like the sharp edges that it has, I could then go to this section here that says corner radius and I could just work on it. So I can also come to this dotted point here hold on to my command or control, double click, and I will get this arrow here, this arrow that comes out, and I can then make other kind of funny adjustments to it. So we use it in design to create some kind of unique shapes that are not common, but they give the design somewhat form of a feel. Do you get? So that's how that works. All right, so pen tool, this other one is pencil. You just maybe use it to write or do one or two things. I basically don't use that on my designs. Then the T here is the text tool. Once you click on T on your keyboard, you can also activate the text tool, and once you click on it, you can start typing. So this is what it is, and I can come to this section. So depends on what you have going on here or what you select here. That's the option you will see on this right hand side, this property section here. So if I select a frame, I'll see these options to adjust the x-axis or the y-axis, or to adjust the width or the height, the corner radius, clip content, right? Clip content just snaps everything inside. So if I move this one out now, like I move it into the frame, you can see a part of it is being hidden into the frame. So if I select this frame and I go to clip content and I unselect the clip content, everything that is hidden inside the frame automatically comes out and you can see it. That's how clip content works. All right, so I'm going to go back and clip my content back because I want everything to be inside it. Okay, so depends on what you select here. That's the options you will get here. So we also have auto layout here. I'm going to show you how auto layout works with time. We also have our layout grid. So for layout grid now, layout grid is more like guidelines, more like, let's say, some set of rulers or marks that we put on our design to guide us in designing better. There are usually some specifications for desktop designing, mobile application designing, or watch designs. You know, there's specification that you use for that. I have other tutorials where I showed you those type of specifications, but basically this is what it is. If I click this plus sign, you get this grid line. They're more like tiny grid lines telling you that, okay, if you put me here, you know, there's something like alignment we have in design. If you don't follow some spacing patterns, hierarchy in some things, your design won't look as neat as that. But we want you to have some set of guidelines that you follow that make your designs good. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a columns, and I'm going to give it a 12 grid columns. Let's give the margin a 64. So margin is the space between the edges of this frame. So the 64 I gave it, you can see the spacing where this column is starting from the edge of the frame. But if I give it a 120, it gives it more breathing space, right? So this is count 12, meaning that I have 12 grid lines here that I'm working with. So this 12 grid line also helps me to calculate. Let's say I want to put 4 rectangles on my designs, right? It helps me to like calculate better, to say this is what I want to do. So I'm going to come here. I already know how many this is going to accommodate. I think 4. So I'm going to come here again. I put this one here, but the spacing between these two columns are actually small. One column to the other is actually small, right? Meaning that if I follow my grid lines here, the spacing between one item and the other is going to be very small, and it's going to make my work look as if it is not that neat. I'm going to go back to my layout grid here, click on this item here, and I'm going to go to the gutter. I want the gutter to be as much as, let's give it a 24. That's the spacing we have here. Or let's give it a 32. See, it looks okay. So for this frame here, the gutter, let's give it as much as 64 because I want the space to be pronounced. The margin, I gave it as much as 120. So you can see that the spacing between this item and this one is better. So let me move this one here, and I'm going to come here, do the same, come here and do the same. Now if I want this whole item to snap together, I'm going to create an auto layout within it. So auto layout in simple terms is more like it helps us to create things, to snap things more in place. So if I click on this one, hold on to my shift, select the other one, still holding on to my shift, select the next one and select the other one. To activate an auto layout, you can either come to this properties panel and click auto layout, or I can click shift A to activate it. Now automatically this is showing me that the spacing between each of this item is a 64. Remember that the gutter we chose is a 64. Let me center this. Now how beautiful auto layout is now is, if I remove this one, everything snaps back like well. It's not going to be scattered, it's going to just arrange itself. Do you understand? That is how the auto layout is. There's so many other things we do with auto layout. For instance, if I want to create a button, a very responsive button, I'll click on T on my keyboard and I'll type button. So if I type button on my keyboard, let me change the color here. Let me change it to a black. I'm going to hold on to this, select the text, click on Shift A to create an auto layout. So once I do that, it has created more like a box for me where this text is inside, right? You can see the text from this layers panel. The text is inside a frame now. But now I can add some colors and some other things going on with it. So let's say I come to the corner radius and I give it a 20. I come to fill, I'm going to give it another color, a white color. Now this auto layout also has its own settings going on here. So this one is horizontal gap within the item. Don't worry, I'm going to explain that to you just a minute. Now this other one is horizontal padding, the padding that you have on the sides to the items that we have inside the frame, and this other one is the vertical padding, right? So for horizontal padding, let's give it a 24. If we give it a 24, for the vertical padding we can leave it as much as 8. Now let me go and bring an icon. So if you right click, there's a plugin called icon, hero icons. If you click on it, it gives you icons that you can use in your design, so you don't need to go download and all of that. Figma is very resourceful. So I'm going to click on this icon and I'm going to bring it here. Now what auto layout does is it houses things. That's the simple word I can use. It houses things and adjusts them according to the size you've given to it. So remember I told you about this section here, this horizontal gap between items. If I come here and I try to move my arrow in, the arrow is going to snap into it because it's an auto layout, and automatically this text is going to create a space for my arrow, and this box itself will expand. But even when it's expanded, it is going to expand according to the sizing I've given it. So the size, the horizontal padding is still going to be 24, the vertical padding is still going to be 24. Now the space between item here, this is what it means. The space between any two items that we have inside the auto layout is going to be 10, spacing between them. So but I want the spacing between them to be 8. So if I click on 8, you can see it's going to adjust. Let me move this here. So you can move item without being scared that your work is going to be scattered while you're working. That's why we use like this button here. That's basically it. So we have stroke here. So if I want to give this item a stroke now, it's more like creating a borderline by the side of it, right? That is what it does. So let me increase the stroke so you can understand what I'm saying. Okay, this is too much. Let me give it a 4. So like a borderline is going to have like a borderline. That's what the stroke does. That's what the stroke does. This is the width, like the weight of it. So if you want it to be thicker, you increase it. If you want it to be lighter, you reduce it, right? And also just where we did in that corner radius. For this section here, you can use it to select where you want the stroke to be. Maybe I want the stroke to be on the all side here, every side. I just want it to be at the top. If I want it to be at the top, let me zoom in so you understand. It's just going to be on top here. You can see the stroke, but you're not going to see it at the bottom here. So if I also want it to be on the right, it's just going to be on the right here, but you're not going to see it anywhere else. Right. Then you can also change the color of the stroke. Maybe you want the color to be red. And if you want it to be, you can see different behavior. This is how it says. So if I want the stroke to be outside, it's going to adjust. If I want it to be centered, it's also going to adjust. Depends on what I give it. Right. So I think we're making a lot of progress. We've covered these whole tools here. We've done the test tool. Then resources is more like plugins, components, and those are components that you have. And we have plugins, widgets, and all that. So we now have the hand tool here. This hand tool, once you activate it, you use it to move your screen. Maybe you want to move screen here, but basically how I do that is I hold on to my space button on my keyboard and I just adjust or move items or move my screen like this. Right. So the next tool here is this add comment. So if you select this add comment here, let's say I want to leave a comment on this image here. Once I select it, I'm going to click on it and I'm going to start typing. This image is for commercial purposes. All right. So if you come to this place, if you have text here, comment that you've left, if you click on comments, you're now going to see it on this section here. You can filter the comment, maybe sort it by date, sort by unread, resolved. You can also resolve some of these comments, right? By clicking this section here, you've resolved it. That is basically how Figma works. You can see that it's not hard. It's just knowing where to click, where to get the tools that you need to design an application. So I'm going to try to explain how effects works. I've explained how export works, right? So if you want to export an item today, you can just select the item and come here, click on the plus sign, select the quality you want, right? And then you can either export it as a PNG, JPEG, SVG, or PDF. But before you export, you can also preview what you're exporting, and you can click on export file here. All right, so these are other settings here. Maybe color profile, you want it to be as RGB or you want it to be as display P3, you know, just depends on what you are doing. So the next thing we're going to do is try to create assets here, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you how effects and prototype works. I've gone through prototype, but I'm also going to show you how it works. All right, let's go ahead and start with asset. Before I start with asset, I think I want to mention about pages here in Figma. So this is the first page we're using. Let's call it design 1. I just double clicked in it and I renamed it. So I can also come here and create another page, design 2. So on this free version, you can create as much as 3 pages for teams when you are working in your team project file. If you're working on the free version, for instance, I'm going to go to this home tab. I'm going to go to draft and click on design file. So when you come to design file here, you can have as many pages as you like. Just keep adding pages. Pages is more like in this section here. Let's say I have this going on. I have this shape going on. In this other section, I might have a different kind of design that I kept here. You can just title it. Maybe you have different designs you're working on, maybe mobile version here, web version, or anything, right? And you can rename them. Let's say design 1, design 2. So yeah, I thought to mention that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I'm just going to right click and select delete, right click and select delete, and go to our design. All right, so what I'm going to do is show you how asset works. So remember I told you that asset is more like items that you've created that are now more like in your library that you can reuse without creating that thing again. So I'm going to use button to illustrate what asset is. So I'm going to click on T on my keyboard. I'm going to make sure I select my keyboard and click on T. Then I'm going to type buttons. So for this button now, you know, when you're designing, you have different places where you put the buttons. So you can create buttons, you can create text. For text now, you have different sizes of text. Maybe a small text, maybe you want to use a font of, let's say, 12, right? You can see this one, I'm using 20, but let's say you get to a section where you don't want to use a font as large as 20 and you want to use a font as low as 12, right? You know, that will mean that you're going to manually be adjusting the font each time. But if you like create what I'm about to show you in different things that you use, maybe in shapes, maybe in your cards, if you have a card, you want to be using it across, you have a text, you create different versions of those text, different versions of the buttons, then you can reuse it in your design. That also helps you to achieve some form of consistency across your design. So if I see these elements here and I go to a similar place in your design, I'm supposed to see the same element and not something new that will make it look different, right? So that's the concept of asset. So once I type this button, I want to create a button. I'm going to click on Shift A to activate an auto layout here. Just as I did before, I'm going to come to this horizontal padding. I'm going to make it a 24. So for the vertical padding, I'm going to give it an 8. And this one, I'm not adding a button here. Let me just give it an 8. I'm going to right click, go to plugins here, and I'm going to choose this icon. So for this icon, I'm going to chuck it here, keep it like this. So these icons usually come with a frame on its own. So you can see the icon from this layers panel here. This is a vector, that's the icon itself. I'm going to remove it. Since I've removed it, that means the frame that it came with will now be given another space to keep itself. You know, this is an auto layout. An auto layout is very respectful, it's very responsive. If you add another item here, it's going to adjust accordingly because you set this horizontal padding to be 24, so it has to be 24. It has to give space for any other item you add here, but I'm going to delete this here. Let's go ahead and add a fill here. I'm going to come to this fill section and hit the plus sign. Then I'm going to hold on to my command and double click to select just the text that I have in here, and I'm going to change the color. So we have this going on. So let me just round the corners to a 4. All right. Then I'm going to go ahead again and reduce the space that I have in between here to a 4. Then I'm going to select the icon here. I want to reduce the width of the icon, right? Let me give it a 14. I think it's too long. All right. So I'm creating an asset, don't forget. You know, there are different types of buttons. You have the button that is your main primary button, then you have a secondary button, right? Then you can also have a button where, let's say, you know, most times when you come to an application or a website, when you hover around a button, it kind of changes color. That's like hover state. That's what we call hover state. When you press the button, it also changes color. Then we also have buttons that are, let me say, red, maybe showing you, do you want to delete? The red might mean danger, you're about to delete, right? But I'm going to create one of two. Let's give this primary color a blue, right? I'm going to change my color here and give it a blue. But I'm going to go ahead and change the other black here to a white. I think it suits better. Right, so let's delete this one first and then duplicate this. So to duplicate this, I like holding on to my option key and then dragging down. So while you drag that, make sure when you're removing your hand from your mouse that you pin down, and the option key, you're removing it at once. If you don't remove it at once, it's not going to duplicate. So I'm going to try to create like the secondary button here. So I'm going to give this one a stroke and give it the same blue color here. But for the fill, I'm going to remove the fill now. right? So this is more like a secondary button. All right, so for this one, I'm going to use this one as maybe a secondary color. So let me duplicate this. I'm going to create an active pressed. That's the press state when you press the button. So let's use this color code now. You can just copy out the color code that I have here. I'm going to remove the stroke that I gave it. Then let's also create a disabled state. Let's use this color code. You can just copy out the color code that I have. Right, this is more like a disabled state. So we can also create a hover state. Let's use this color code. So we have this as the active, this is the disabled, this is the hover, this is like the secondary color button that we have, and this is the main primary button, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select all of it. I'm just highlighting everything, like dragging my mouse around it, and I'm going to come to this top section here. I'm going to click the drop down and then select create component set. So I'm going to double click in that section and title it buttons. Then for I'm going to select each one and come to this section here, this property section here. Then I'm going to come here and rename it. I'm going to call it let's say primary button, right? So this one I'm going to call it, let's say this would be my secondary button. So for this other one, let's call it that's our active state. And for this one, this is our disabled state, right? Then for this other one, this is our hover state. Let's call it hover, right? So now we have this component here. If you go to the asset panel here, click on this asset panel, you're going to see this thing that you created, this button, this component you created on your local components. So let's say I want to create a mobile app, right? I'm going to select this frame now. If I click on this to add this button here, right? Now I don't need to start typing a text or changing the color manually. I just click the drop down here because it's a component, right? And if you check this panel here, you're going to see it's titled components and buttons rather. If you click on the drop down, you could see the difference. Maybe you want to change it now. Let's say I want to change this to a hover state. I'll click on it, automatically changes. If I want to change it to a disabled state, automatically changes to whatever it is that is here. All right, so another way when it comes to prototyping, right? So let's say I click on this first one. I click on this. I'm going to go to prototype on this section here, select prototype so that I can connect mine. So prototyping here on this Figma is you're connecting one frame to another. So when you click on it, you're going to define the reaction of each connection you make. So I'm going to take this here. I'm just dragging it out and I'm going to put it on this hover state. So once you do that, you're going to get this dialog box here. It's asking you what action do you want it to perform? Is it when that button is being clicked that it changes to this one, or what happens? But I want it that while hovering, when you hover around it, let it change to the other one. Do you understand? So that is what I simply did. So now you can only see this action when you play your prototype. So I'm going to go to this section here, this top right section here. So you have option to present your work, right? When you're presenting your work, it activates the prototypes that you've connected, everything you've connected. So when you click this button, it's going to move to another page, or anyhow you have connected it, is going to react that way. So this is what makes our designs look like the real application that has been designed because of prototyping, right? So if I click on present, it's going to open in another page. However, I just want to preview it right on this page I'm designing. So when I click the drop down, I'm going to select preview and it's going to open up right beside me. Here now, I'm going to change the button here. Let's use the first primary button. So if I hover around it now, when I hover my mouse around it, you can see. So what we're going to do now is to play the prototype, right? I'm going to select this one. So I changed it. So I'm going to play the prototype like this. Now, just to get more realistic, to make it look more realistic, I'm going to come to this section here where you have this prototype, and I'm going to go to click on show prototype setting, right? Then I'm going to come to device here and I'm going to find an appropriate iPhone mockup here, so that when I go to my play here, it's going to have like that, this frame. Okay, this gives it a more realistic view, as if you're on your mobile application. Remember the prototype settings that we did. Now if I hover around this, it is going to change appearance, right? If I remove my mouse, but if I hover around it, it's going to change appearance. And that's how this asset works and prototyping works. So the next major thing I want to show you now is how to use effects in Figma. While you go deep into design, you're going to really understand or start using effects in Figma and see what it works. But right now I'm going to do a 3D. I'm going to create like a 3D shape in Figma just to show you the spectacular things you can use effects to do. Right, so what I'm going to do now is to click on O on my keyboard. O activates this our ellipse tool here. So I'm going to click O again. I'm going to hold on to shift and I'm going to create a shape. So but I have a definite shape or size I want to give it. Let's give this a 200. All right, so you can see how flat this shape is, but I'm going to turn it to a 3D ball right now using effects in Figma and other things. Like you will see how other things works. Like so on this fill section, it's not just the fields that we have, we also have this. If you click the second box here, this gradient box, you have different options to create a linear effect. You could create a radial, angular, diamond, different effects or different ways that all the things react. So we're going to use all of that right now to create a 3D shape in Figma. All right, so this is our basic shape here, our basic ellipse shape. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it a color. You can copy out the color code I'm using. All right, so I like this color. So what I'm now going to do is to give it an effect. I'm going to go to this effect section and click the plus sign, but I'm going to give it an inner shadow, right? So you don't need to understand everything. Just try to pay attention on the effect it is having on the shape, right? That will also guide you to know what effect you're going to apply to a shape. So you can see the effect it gave it here, right? It's sort of created a highlighted section here on this shape, right? We're starting to get more like a 3D ball effect. But I'm going to go ahead and also work on this section here. So the effect here, if you click on this star-like thing here, it also brings up this dialog here where you can make adjustment or make settings, adjust the settings. So for this x-axis, I'm going to give it an 8. So it's not like there's a place where you get a defined sizing for all of settings for all of this. You just have to play around with it and get something that works, and I've already done it, and that's why I'm able to put that number. So don't be hard on yourself. For this one, I'm going to give it a -8. So for then the blur, I'm going to give it as much as 24. The spread, I'm leaving it as 0. That spread is how much it spreads, right? And yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. All right. So you can see we're starting to have a more filled shape. So I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to hold on to this and click on Command C, Command V. That means I've created two shapes here. There's a second shape on it, right? So for this second shape here, I'm going to go to, it has effect, but I'm going to close the effect. Remember, I'm not working on the first one we've created. I'm working on the second one. So I'm going to go to this fill, click on this fill box here, and I'm going to go to this second gradient, and I'm going to leave it a linear, a radial. Let's give it a radial, right? So for this radial now, I'm going to change this color to an HSB. I'm going to give it a different color. Let's give this a 0, give this a 02, and give this a 100. All right, so for this other side, this other color, so let me move this here. There's something I'm trying to achieve with it. I'm going to move this here a bit. So this is the first color. For this other second color here, we're going to give it a 337. Yeah, we're leaving it like that. Let's just play around this just for a moment. All right, I'm just going to go ahead again and work on it just a bit. So this one is as much as 100, while this one is like this. All right, just making adjustments. So you can see that it's looking more like a ball. Now compare it to this shape, this initial thing that we started working with. Compare it, you can see it's more like a rounded ball, 3D ball. But I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to click on use this shape here. Let's just adjust it a bit. Let's give the width a 222. For the height, let's make it a 44. All right, so you can see that these two objects here, these two ellipses here, I'm going to select the two of them, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to group it because I want it to be one group. So when I'm moving it around, it comes as a group. So this one is, you can see I'm trying to put this here so it can be underneath these because I want this shape to cast shadows, right? So I'm going to take this ellipse here and I'll drag it down into the group, under the group, so I can place it very well. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to give this a radial, just give it the same radial effect gradient it has here. But for this one, I'm giving it as much as a 000. All right. So, but for the second one, I'm leaving it at 0084. I think it's okay. All right. So let's try to reduce the size of this. Let's give it a 14. Right. Or let's give it as much as, okay, so we can work with this. So for this linear thing we have here, I'm going to reduce the opacity to, let's say, a 30. All right, now let's go ahead to make it a 25. I'm going to drag it a bit. I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to make adjustment just a bit, reduce this too. So it's kind of having a deep sharp contrast. That's because of my background. So let me go ahead and change my background to a white so you can understand or see better. So come to this section here where you have page. Could just make adjustment to the color here. I'm just trying to adjust the color. Right. So I'm going to play around it just a bit again. So let's go ahead and change this linear to radial just a bit, because it's too, it was too shouting, or it's not subtle enough. Right, so that's for the first one. So for the second one, I'm going to work on it a bit too. So remember, we have two shapes here. So let me change this to radial too. Right, so I'm going to put it together. I'm going to select the both of them and also group them. So we have something casting a bit of shadow here. Right. So I'm just tilting it a bit. Okay. So this is how you create this shape right in Figma. It's actually as simple as that. Right, so let me go ahead and create like a practical summary of what we've done, right? So I'm going to create a simple web page now. I'm going to go to this tool and click on frame, and I'm going to select go to desktop and select desktop. So let's call this website. All right, it's always good to title your frame so that you know what you're doing. So for this one, remember, our website usually have like a menu thing going on here. All right, so I'm going to give it a height of 56. So for this section here, while you're designing, this section here helps you align things perfectly. Okay, so you could either align bottom here, it stays at the bottom, or you could align top, it stays directly at the top. You could align it, make sure it's aligned horizontally, or you could just align it to that section. You can just play around the side, right? So remember, for a website, let's click on T and let's type home. But I'm going to change the font here to, let's give it a 16, and let's give it a bold. Let's use this font, Sin. Okay, so for this section here, letter spacing, if you reduce the letter spacing, the items here become, let's say, more together. But we use this section here, line height and the letter spacing, to create some form of a different feel and look for our font or our text, right? So I'm just going to leave this at auto because I don't want to do anything. I don't want it to have anything. Right, so I'm just going to chuck it in here just to help you have a feel of what website is. I'm going to type this as our services. Then I'm going to also type this as contact us, just like basic things that websites have. What other thing can a website have? Let's say let's call it promo, right? Right, so I'm going to select all of them, hold on to shift, select all of them, and create an auto layout. So auto layout will give me a defined spacing between, same amount of spacing between them here. You can see the spacing here. Then you can go ahead and give it the spacing you like, let's say a 32. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and double click in any of them, select this one, and then create an auto layout for this one because I want it to be my call to action. For this one, I'll give the horizontal padding, I'll give it as much as a 16. The vertical padding, let's reduce it to a 4. Oh no, let's give it an 8. All right, so for this one, let's leave it at a 4. Okay, so we can give this a fill color. This is like basically what we've done before. Double click in this and give this one a white. Let me give this one a corner radius of 4. All right, so we can also go ahead and increase the height of this. Then I'm going to select all of it, this one and this one, create an auto layout to give it a spacing here. For this spacing here, we can leave it as much as a 92. Let's give it a 92. Then this one is home. Home can be here. Then we can have some form of, let's say, a logo. Let's create a logo here. Let's call it HM logo. Let me reduce the, so we have our logo going on here. Remember, we always put on a grid, layout grid. It's just like a summary of everything that I've shown you before. I'm going to give it a margin of 120 and also give it a gutter of, let's give it as much as a 64. No, 64 is too much. Let's give it a 48. Still too much. 24. Fine. So now I'm going to work within the grid lines, make sure these are positioned here, you know, then drag this one to this grid line, I'm going to select this and then hit, but we don't need this home button here. Nope, not needed. So selecting the two of them and clicking on Shift 8 to create an auto layout. Then I'm going to hold on to this auto layout thing that I've created and then hold on to Shift and select that rectangle, and I'm going to come to this horizontal padding. Sorry, I'm going to come to this alignment section and click on align horizontally, right? And I'm also going to click on align vertically, so it's going to be positioned well. So normally what you see on websites are simple actions here. Maybe we have an image here, right click, go to plugins, go to pixels. You can also use Unsplash to get your now let's change the image to, let's use this car. All right, so I'm going to try to round the corners to up to a 16 just to have that effect, right? Then I'm going to click on T and I'm going to type, let's say vintage cars. Let's increase the font to a 48. But you can see that this font is not visible enough, right? You can't see it font. So let's change the font to a military. All right, so I'm going to increase the letter spacing a bit. And I'm also going to increase this a bit. Vintage cars. I'm just creating the only choice to make. I'm going to reduce the font here to be as much as a 34. Then I'm going to reduce this to a medium. If you watch my 30 days video tutorial, you will understand, or you will be a perfect designer. So to get dummy tests, in the case where you don't want to start writing things and you're just freestyling, you can just go to manage plugins here. Let's type this generator, this text generator here. It's asking you for number of sentences, let's say 2, and I'm going to click on create. All right, so let's run this other plugin because that other one is not working. So let's choose 3 sentences. So you can see that's giving me random dummy text. I'm going to reduce this height here. So this has a letter spacing, but I don't want it to have that. It also has a line height. Let's keep it at auto. Right, so I'm going to select this and choose this, create an auto layout to snap it in. Make sure the spacing between it is 28, which is fine. Then I'm going to use my asset here, go and select a button. I'm going to select a button here and I'm going to place buttons here. Let's say I'm creating 2 buttons now. Then I'm going to change this button here to, let's say, a secondary button. But you know, the color we use here is white. But let's go ahead and change our background here. Let's come here and give it a bit of a Let's give something going on here. Then for this menu section here, let's change it to white. Right. So I'm going to select this and create an auto layout. Select this other one, create an auto layout. Spacing of 100 is just relatively okay. So I'm going to drag this down for a bit. All right. So this is as simple as it gets, right? You've created something. Right now we have used almost everything we've learned. We've used rectangle here, we've used frames, we use text here, we use auto layout, we use plugins here, we imported image into our shape here, created auto layout. You know, this is basically how it works. You could see how I explained everything, how all the tools here work, and we practically used it. So thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.